Hello, my name is Katie Groves, and this is part 5 in my deprogramming series about deprogramming from trauma-based mind control. If you've not done so already, I ask that you watch the first 2 videos in this series, which provide disclaimers and safety information for anyone who wishes to watch these videos. I've linked them in the description below. This video follows up after my last videos about meeting my higher self, or my inner loving parent, and is about awakening to the reality of the inner child. My inner child is my core self. It's who I really am, in addition to my higher self, my inner loving parent, who is also another aspect of my core self, who I really am. But I feel like the child within is the heart and soul of all of it. I was not able to heal until I became aware of my inner loving parent self, who takes care of me, protects me, tells me when to stop healing, as in when to stop processing and when to start again, so that I can do this whole process safely. But to meet my inner child was the second step in all of this, and that's really where the core of my pain that kept me bound in the programming began to unwind. I first met my inner child a few months into my healing process and in my recovery process from drug and alcohol abuse, which I will talk about in a video soon. All of those things go hand in hand together, this work and recovery from drugs and alcohol, so I could not do this until I got sober. So a few months into my healing, I found myself in a group of adult survivors of child abuse. And in this group, people talked a lot about the inner child. I had already recently become aware that I was consistently going into a state, regressing into a state where I was about 6 years old. And this would happen usually when confronted by an adult, by an abuser. When someone became abusive towards me, specifically verbally, and specifically in a shaming way, I became very small inside. And I recognized that I was about 6. And I started piecing together that this had been happening for years. I started noticing it around the age of 14. Whenever this would happen, whenever someone would confront me, I would often become 6 years old inside. And I was already aware to some degree that this 6-year-old part of me was a very deep core part of me. And I suppose I had started experiencing this at 14, because at 14 I was reprogrammed rather badly after many attempts to escape, and the reprogramming actually gave me a lot of access to myself. So I was aware to some degree that I had this inner child, but I didn't have that word for it yet. And when I found this group of people for survivors of child abuse, I started really paying attention to what people said about the inner child, because I recognized this as a way to heal myself from trauma that I had never encountered before, and I was desperate to heal. I was not yet aware that I'd been programmed, but I knew something was very wrong, and I was desperate to do whatever it took to work through my trauma, because I recognized that my PTSD was fueling my addiction, and I knew that I had to stay sober at all costs. So I first made contact with my inner child directly by doing an exercise in non-dominant handwriting. I'm right-handed, and so this exercise suggested that I write a letter with my right hand in my adult self to my inner child. And then I switch hands and give the pencil to my left hand, or pen to my left hand, and I wait for a response from my inner child. And at first I thought this was very silly, and I was not sure what to expect. And all of a sudden, after writing this letter, as was suggested by the group, offering myself as a safe person to talk to, asking for that child to come forward and talk to me about anything she wanted to talk to me about, I switched dissociative states. And I didn't even know that I was DID yet, or I had DID yet, but I switched dissociative states, and another part took over in co-consciousness. And this part gave me a name. a male name and spoke very briefly and said some very frightening things about having been sexually abused. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, I'm in territory that I did not know I was going to be in. And I was very frightened. But I did have support people in this group, one person in particular, who helped me to walk through that fear and keep reaching out to myself. And other parts started coming forward. And this person pointed out to me that my handwriting was changing. And while this person was not a therapist and did not give me any kind of diagnosis or anything, she did tell me about dissociative identity disorder and point out that I was having arguments in my notebook between parts who were writing things that I did not remember, and their handwriting was switching. And that's when the floodgates really opened, and finally I realized, oh my God, I think I have multiple personalities. So making contact with my inner child opened the door to my healing from DID, but it was only something that I could do after already having made contact with my inner loving parent, my higher self, who was able to create a safe enough space for that inner child to come out. That's all I have to say. In my next video, I will talk about more healing tools for working with inner child parts. Thank you.